let's transition over to contamination OCD. And so the first thing that we want to mention that a lot of our clients with contamination, with OCD in general, are talking about how the thing that felt so isolating and so stigmatized and so unique to their personal story, which is the way that they were getting caught in very specific uncertainties that no one else worried about, is now happening to everybody. So everybody is having a lot of uncertainty, a lot of anxiety. There actually are a lot more uncertainties, but specifically the way that COVID-19 is playing out, where there's very specific uncertainties about being contaminated and whether you're going to contaminate someone else, and you can't know with certainty whether or not that's occurring. That just maps on to contamination OCD. And for people that have never experienced that at all, I hope it is very validating to those that suffer from contamination OCD, that it's actually very difficult to tolerate being palpably aware of the uncertainty of the possibility of a threatening thing happening. And really everybody's talking about it because it's so uncomfortable to tolerate. Do you have thoughts about that?
Yeah. That's right on.
Yeah, so with that in mind, I'm actually hearing a variety of different reactions, ranging from it's really validating for my friends and family to be basically saying the same thing that I'm thinking all the time, to kind of resenting the fact that other people are talking about it, maybe as though it's so unique to a person that has been experiencing it every day for years. And so I just want to offer that it really is an opportunity to normalize. It's an opportunity to teach, reduce stigma. So if you were suffering from contamination OCD prior to this pandemic, I think you're the one, and you have skills around how you manage uncertainty. You are now in a position of power. Like now you're the one that can teach your friends and family how you've effectively dealt with uncertainty, along with like getting support from them. So we just hope that that can be an empowering experience. Again, do you want to say anything about that, Jenna?
Yeah.
Okay, so the other thing, the more specific, besides normalization, validation, and empowerment, I think I do also want to comment on more specific advice related to contamination OCD, which is to follow the guidelines from the CDC the way that you would follow guidelines and rules in therapy. So in therapy, we often say, you can only wash after you go to the bathroom, before you eat, and if your hands are visibly dirty. And when you're washing, you have to wash to Happy Birthday, or basically 10 seconds, and any song that takes up 10 seconds. So obviously the guidelines have moved to 20 seconds. And when you wash a little bit more frequently, because if you're touching surfaces outside of your home, it's okay to then go, or it's encouraged to then go wash your hands. But what I'm hearing from people is that they're still kind of taking that to the next level. So rather than just lathering your hands and like rinsing them under cold, warm water, people are scrubbing their hands until they're getting raw. They might be worried about their arms and their elbows and anything else that their body that has touched any other surface. And so I just want to encourage again that it's so like you basically treat the CDC like it's the conscientious model, and remember that your OCD always hijacks the thing that you care about. And so oftentimes one of the things that maintains contamination OCD is typically conscientiousness, particularly when it's tied to harm OCD too. And so you can use the CDC as a conscientious model and not allow your OCD to hijack what's happening.
Maggie, can I ask you to clarify what a conscientious model is? I think it's such an important concept.
Yeah, great. Let me actually step back for a second and talk about inflated responsibility. So we've kind of talked about on the podcast and my blog, different cognitive and behavioral mechanisms that maintain anxiety and OCD. And so inflated responsibility is one cognitive mechanism that maintains harm OCD. and OCD in general and harm OCD in specific. And there's two different types of inflated responsibility. There's inflated responsibility of thinking, which is also called thought action fusion. So that's having a thought feels like it's true. And because having a thought feels like it's true, it makes me want to do something in response. So that could be something like I have the thought that I'm contaminated and my body suddenly feels contaminated.
Mhm.
And then I have the urge to wash. The other form of inflated responsibility is taking too much responsibility for your impact on others. And so in this particular time where we have uncertainty about who's sick and who's spreading it and how it's being spread, it's easy for a person that already gets stuck on what if I harm people to really get stuck on, what if I do something that gets somebody else sick? How am I going to live with myself and the guilt that might come with that? And I'm hearing people doing excessive washing or like excessive compulsions to try to cope with the feeling of guilt. So, yeah, go ahead.
So it sounds like what might be called harm OCD hides as what looks like contamination OCD. They get so fused together in terms of
Yes,
behavior.
exactly. There can be other textures of contamination OCD. For instance, there can be a hypersensitivity to the feeling of disgust that leads to excessive washing or checking. There can be a not just right feeling that can lead or look like contamination OCD. I think what I'm seeing most frequently right now in this pandemic is the blend of contamination OCD and harm OCD that's making people really, really triggered by inflated responsibility and really feeling excessive guilt about the possibility of harm. And so how that ties back to the conscientious model is, again, it's okay to be having the thought that you might harm someone. It's okay to have the feeling of guilt. And if you can see that that's above and beyond what you're thinking and feeling is above and beyond what other people are thinking and feeling or what the CDC is suggesting, you can use the CDC as a conscientious model to say, it's okay for me to follow these guidelines rather than the commands of my OCD. Not because I'm a bad person that's wanting to harm other people, but because my OCD is hijacking my sense of conscientiousness, and I really need somebody else to be the example of what it means to be conscientious right now. One thing that OCD again like hijacks is or like creates is an over sense of conscientiousness that actually gets in the way of people's lives.